What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Audio Link podcast.
Welcome.
If you haven't noticed, we're doing this weekly now because we've become more responsible as people.
We are growing up.
Yes, us having a summative...
Is that a word?
A summative... how many kids do we have? You have 2, I have 3, but then soon we will... So currently we have 5 kids, cumulatively.
Soon to be 7.
Soon to be 7. So we're just learning to be responsible.
That was awesome.
Yes, let's restart this crap.
No, that's good. That's good.
Okay, all right, let's carry on. Today we have our very dear friend Brandon Chynoweth. Chynoweth is the proper pronunciation, actually. And he's shaking his head. Yeah, we're so grateful to have him here, and he is the owner and founder of Epic Resource Group, and just awesome man. He's a mentor to both of us, as you'll hear. So yeah, thanks for being here, and let's have fun.
Boom.
All right, here we go. What's up, everybody?
Not the strongest ramp, but
all right,
we'll
here we
keep
go.
going.
All right, how about you open this one because I opened the last one.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Audio Link podcast. We have
What's
our
up?
friend Brandon Chynoweth here. And
Thanks for being here, Brandon.
thank you for being here.
Super stoked.
Yes. We are stoked as well. It's been,
Yes.
I think, a long time coming.
Oh
for
my
sure.
gosh. Yeah.
Yep.
Big time.
Yeah, you go. You take
Okay,
over. You take
I
over
am
now.
in charge. So
That's
yeah,
all I had. That's all I
That's
had.
good. You handed it off. Yeah, amazing.
This is not going well so far, but
Yes.
we'll just
Oh
we'll
my
ease our
gosh.
way into
We
it.
need
See
to
if we can make
cancel
it
this
better.
whole thing.
It's about being approachable.
Well,
Yes.
we talk about music a lot. Music's that way. You know, sometimes you start the song and everybody's kind of not. Oh, this is good, and then you start pulling it together and it starts feeling good. I mean,
That's true.
there's hope for us.
Yep.
Yes.
Like
It's
any
funny.
good mix. Any good mix.
Did you ever
is it.
have any of those songs that the verses and the bridge and everything were terrible, but the chorus was just so good, and you would
Yes.
just absolutely binge the song, but like even like just suffer through the other parts of it? I 100% did that. I'm trying to think. There was a song that came to my mind when we were talking the other day. It was one of those like British, the rock bands that come with that drama.
They can sure write a chorus.
Oh,
Yes.
The song that comes to mind is Chumbawamba. I get knocked down. No one knows the lyric or the verses. What is this guy saying? No one knows. But I get knocked down and I get up again. That's the chorus.
That's true.
I mean, I think that song is about drinking heavily, but the
Yes, it is.
but the chorus is really life affirming. You know, it's like I get knocked
Yes.
down, but I get up again. It's so.
You know,
I think
it at
people are
least-
tapping into this life affirming quality, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's the intention of the writers.
Yep.
Okay, so essentially, just a little bit about our relationship with Brandon. He is just like a super close friend and mentor to both me and Brandon Meyer, and I have to specify Meyer when Chynoweth is around. But yeah, Brandon, we just we look up to you so much, and
Because you're taller than me.
yes, you're barely taller than me, but I still really look up to you. I'm joking, you're quite a bit taller. But yeah, you've added a lot to our lives, and I'm so happy you get to be part of this fun thing we're doing in a lot of ways. But okay, so I wanted just to hear. I'm not going to let you respond to my kind words. Sorry. I'm
gonna toss a thank you in there.
Oh man, when people say nice things to me, I'm just like, okay, yeah, carry on. So I just projected that onto
No,
you.
I just want to soak it all up. You know.
Yes.
The world is an unaffirming place, so I'll take
so
it.
true.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah. So I wanted to just hear it. You have the most incredible story, and I want to talk about your story today, but also you have so many relevant insights into this world that we're in, that AudioLink is in, and just the world that Brandon and I live in every day. And I thought it would be cool if you could just kind of tell people a little bit about who you are, what you've been working on the last years, and then we'll dive more. We'll go back to the beginning of the story, maybe.
Oh man, that's the broadest question anybody's asked me so far. So,
Perfect. Whatever comes out will be the best.
Who am I?
That's true.
I mean, the very first thing you start to think of when someone tries to define themselves, I am a kingdom person. Like if it's expanding God's kingdom in the world, I don't mean to over spiritualize.
Please do that.
Then I am in.
That's
in
awesome.
what I do in work and what I do in my personal life as a husband, as a dad, and all that. It is about making Jesus more famous and trying to pass that on generationally. And what I'm about is influence. If anything I do has the ability to create more room for people in heaven, then I'm willing to apply whatever resource I have to make that possible. So in this instance, we all work in production in churches in some form or fashion, or worship for churches specifically. And all of those are kingdom expanding efforts. And so that's where I have a gift. And so that's where I've applied my energy. So that's who I am and what I'm about. Where that comes from is a different story.
Yeah.
I'm the product of massive tragedy and an even more massive measure of redemption to offset that. And so I don't want to get into the gory details because I don't want to make everybody super sad out there in podcast land.
No. Give us, whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Sure.
Just kind of overview. Yeah.
The short version is I was just born into a criminally oriented family and with deep religious deceit and a lot of violence. And so in the aftermath of it, so my childhood was very violent and very difficult. People throw the word trauma around quite a lot. Most people couldn't comprehend the trauma of my childhood, and it culminated with my parents passing away when I was 14. And so I had people who became guardians but were initially foster parents who took me and my siblings in. I'm the oldest of a pack of kiddos, and so that's how I ended up in North Texas, 15 years old, and very broken and very lonely. And the Bible says that God is a father of the fatherless, and I think people don't really comprehend why that's an important part of Scripture. It is so difficult not to have parents as a child.
Yikes.
Your sense of identity, your sense of safety, your sense of destiny, all of that is profoundly compromised. And so maybe that's what drives me at some level, because I think people are spiritually orphaned.
Yeah.
Everyone is in some cosmic sense an orphan.
Yeah.
That would explain the drive too, like why the kingdom orientation is so important to you.
Yes. And my kingdom orientation is around the local church. Yeah. Because it is the local churches that I'd interfaced with throughout my life that really brought the story of redemption into my life and made me a whole person. And so you fast forward, a couple decades, and I am a radically whole person in giving away life to other people. That's something that only the miracle of Jesus can produce.
Wow.
And all the things that God can do in someone's life if they let him.
Yeah.
And so
I can testify to that.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah. And so you all said some really nice things about me when we started here, and every nice thing you say about me, that is the product of the redemption story in my life, propagated into the lives of other people. So if someone can come from as much darkness and despair and traumatic destruction as I experienced, and I say that I've glossed over that because I don't want to traumatize the listeners.
We'll just put an explicit mark on the episode and we'll be fine. Just cut it loose. No, I'm joking.
What I'd say is, if there's hope for me, there's hope for anybody. And so what we do in trying to make the message, the gospel message, and the experience of worship more accessible to people in mass. Yeah. And I work in the live production side, and we design worship spaces, and you all are making those spaces sound better we're propagating that same. If there's hope for me, there's hope for you.
Yeah.
Because that's the basic premise of the gospel.
Yes.
Is there's hope for everybody, and the story of redemption is available to anybody.
Yes.
I feel like
Did I go too far there?
No,
you
that's
asked.
good.
I just
Oh
jumped
my
right
gosh!
into the deep
No,
end.
I
that
felt
was
like-
right down the center. Yeah.
I've always felt from the beginning of what we're doing here is that there is a profound, like a profundity behind all of this, and it's hard to put into words, but I think that you've just helped me understand why, like on a deeper level, why that's so important, because
Yes.
that fatherlessness is so prevalent.
Yeah.
It's literally all of humanity.
Well,
you know.
you could come from a brilliant nuclear family, or you could have grandparents that started a famous ministry. I don't want to name names, but but you
Moving on.
you have you're still an orphan spiritually.
Yeah.
Everybody has to choose to have a heavenly father,
Yeah.
and there's something that's so life-changing about that for people. It also gives you the ability to give life away to other people. Yeah. And when you start to see that happen in someone's life, that's really rewarding.
You made me just think like how desperate all humans are for acceptance. You know, we all need acceptance like we need air. And people who, I feel like anyone that I see that is just awry, just off, it's an acceptance issue. Like they don't feel accepted. They don't feel like they belong, and they're acting up. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's I was thinking about what we do, the three of us. And it's like, okay, there's like it's a process towards their acceptance into the family, and then they're like baptism and redemption after first being accepted into this. It like it's the full circle of completion for man, really, like, and his purpose on earth. And how, like, I'm thinking of the first time. Well, we kind of our friendship started. Both of our friendships. My friendship with each of you guys started like it was like a kind of a quick marriage. Yeah. But most friendships, it's like, hey, do you want to come to this thing at our house? And it's a group hangout, and then it's like. Then maybe it's a hangout with less people, or maybe then you have a side conversation at church or at the coffee shop or whatever. And then eventually it's like, hey, then you guys are friends. Like you call each other unsolicited, to the point that you call each other every day. That's like a real, real friendship. And I feel like what we do is almost like what the worship experience, the reason we want to make it so excellent, yes, is for the person that comes every week and all that. But part of it is like, we're like throwing out this net. We're like creating and we're almost like those initial contacts, those initial like, hey, do you want to come to this thing at our house? It's almost like what we do is. It's like this draw. We're using this art to like draw people in and receive that acceptance. And I just think that's like, I don't know.
I remember that testimony we got of someone it was a front of house install we did, I want to say 4 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we got a testimony that there's an old lady, and she never wanted to come to church because it always sounded so horrible.
Yeah. Or something about the sound disallowed her from going to church. She was saying like it hurt her ears.
Yeah, effectively.
Yes.
And then she came back.
Like it was some medical issue or something going on.
Yeah, she came back and she was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And she's been.
And
back
they had
since.
just started a few months ago, and she stopped going to she had been going to the church for years, and then she stopped going because of her health, and she couldn't handle the sound. We started audio linking, and then she came back. It was a dramatic. That's a dramatic.
It's crazy. Like
impact.
So what you're saying is real. Like throwing the net, like removing distractions from the nature of why someone's alive. Like
yes,
they need to be straight into the. Into the experience without distraction. Yeah.
So in business, it's just the concept of barriers to entry.
Yeah.
And at least every ministry or every church experience, there's a million barriers to entry. You're not greeted well. It feels weird. It feels old. It feels judgy. Can you imagine the courage it takes to darken the door of a church for the first time?
Oh my gosh.
If you're not used to it, it can feel weird and off-putting.
Yeah.
We have something at Epic that's just it's in our design studio where we design these spaces, and it says every seat matters in this big piece of plexiglass. It's kind of a laser etched backlit glass panel and has lights on it. It's a feature statement, and it's our internal motto where the person who's sitting on the very back row, and you don't know what's going on in their life. You don't know how rejected they feel. You use the phrase acceptance. You use the phrase acceptance.
Yeah.
And people feel profoundly rejected, especially when it comes to their spirit. They feel totally isolated. And we're creating shared experiences. That's where it's sort of, when I was, started all this, Epic was experience, participate, inspire, connect.
Yeah.
And the first two things are just what people need. This experience, like something's happening to me. And the participate is I am happening to it.
Yes, in response to
I'm
an action.
responding.
Yes.
Right. And inspire, connect. This is what leaders at least should be trying to do. Inspire people to take one more step and connect them with this sense of community.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm blocking anything. I just realized I'm
No, dude, you're good. It doesn't matter.
I just weirded myself out then. Sorry, buddy. This
Production
experience, participate.
Yeah.
What you guys are doing is eliminating barriers to entry. If someone shows up, no one's going to think it sounds good. They're just going to think this band is cool and this pastor feels like he's talking to me. If someone thinks it sounds good, you failed. But if you're invisible, then you've massively succeeded.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the premise of quality, especially in sound, is didn't notice. The band was great.
Yep.
Yeah.
The music touched me. That pastor, man, he was talking to me.
That is
Yes. That non-believer walks in and they're just smiling during worship because they're like, I like this.
This is happening.
I like this. This is good.
it. Yeah.
And that's amazing. Okay.
Anyway,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
a huge fan of what y'all are doing.
Oh,
so
thanks.
Just
That's not what this is
I
about.
hope I've made this clear, but anyways, I think we're talking about me, but I'm making it about you so we can all feel awkward together.
Oh, perfect.
Ooh.
We need some of that. Okay, so Brandon,
We make it plenty awkward ourselves.
Oh yes,
Okay.
we're sufficiently awkward in our lives. So you started. I think part of the reason we're like such good friends is because like a lot of our core structures, and like I had to take an Uber here, and the guy driving me he played outside linebacker at Arkansas. And because of that, and he's like starting a business. All right, so we just established like these two things, like sports and what it means in your life now, and then entrepreneurship, right? And he and I were just vibing out immediately. I like didn't take any of the calls I was supposed to because we were just like in it. I think about our relationship. One of like the foundational things, even though like business and all this we talk about is like audio is this shared interest, right? And now we have families. I mean, we have like 20 things that we connect on, but could you just tell me a little bit about like, okay, how did it go from that kind of like disastrous situation you came out of to then like, when did you understand like, okay, like XLR's cables into the snake or like sound speakers, and actually start to become an audio engineer? Like at what age, what happened?
I'm going to date myself, and this is going to be
All right,
it's going to be
bleep it out.
embarrassing.
let it loose.
So,
We will bleep all of this out.
Gabriel, bleep it out.
my father was a prodigiously good piano player, and so I loved music. I took classical piano for 7 years, and I was a total hack.
Okay.
And so my big rebellion, I didn't have anybody to rebel against, so my big rebellion was I learned to play electric guitar.
Nice.
That's it. So
What was the first song you learned? Do you remember?
probably More Than a Feeling by Boston. I think that sounds right. Yeah. It's fun to play. Power chords, Yeah. There's a whole thing to it. It was brilliant. And I played a fake Stratocaster or a fake Duocaster or some like real
Squire.
bad knockoff Fender into an even worse solid state PV amplifier.
Oh,
It was not great, but it was super fun for me.
Yeah.
Then I figured out that I could line level out of that amplifier with just 1/4-inch cables into a cassette recorder and record myself playing.
No one showed you that? You just were like,
I mean,
how do these
this
connect?
is the days of Radio Shack, and they're like, well, this looks like it says quarter-inch, and that says
That's a
quarter-inch on the
quarter-inch.
packet.
That's
So,
when
like,
you,
let me try
plug
to-
in your dad's headphones into your into the receiver. And
Yeah.
it becomes a microphone.
yeah,
Oh,
that's,
yeah.
that's a
I can
whole
put-
thing too. Yep.
Yep. Now
It's-
the modern version of that is the sub kick.
Yeah, the sub
Yeah,
kick.
yeah. There's something to that. So,
I don't like
I-
those.
and then I wrangled a MIDI keyboard that had a drum machine on it, and I would make little tracks to play guitar to, and I would play like fun little solos and stuff over them. And then I got into, well, I'm going to record all that to a cassette while I play the rhythm tracks, and I'm going to go from cassette to cassette while I played the lead track. And I was just recording myself just playing electric guitar through this terrible PV amplifier I mean, none of it was great, but I was making music and I felt awesome about it.
Oh my
Is there a
gosh.
chance you still have those?
I mean, it's possible. I don't know. I hadn't thought of it.
What age was this?
16, maybe 17 years old, something
Okay.
like that.
Yeah.
I mean, guitar was an outlet for me. I was real sad, man. And so,
Yeah.
and music it just heals your soul. And
Yeah.
music communicates celebration, it communicates grief, it communicates love, it communicates this transcendence. There's so many feelings that music can create for people.
Yeah.
And it's super therapeutic to play
Yeah.
music. And it was for me.
Mm.
And so, that's really where it started. And past that, then I was in college. I got real into recording because I wanted to make music. So I inherited a tiny little bit of money, and I spent a good chunk of it on one 8-track ADAT machine that I could throw in with these other dudes who were building the studio in the back room of a church. And they gave me nighttime access for my contribution by providing one of the machines. And so I had now a 24-track recording environment when
Yeah.
I was in college.
Game time.
So
That's awesome.
I'm at Christ the Nations in the Dallas Baptist, and through all that time, I'm recording demos for people. I've really learned how to program drums pretty well. I could record drums okay. Learned how to mic up guitars. It was all analog.
Yeah.
But you could record all the background vocals and offset those tapes and fly them around. And so now
Yeah.
you have portable background. This is all brand new.
So this is the first time you're playing with the console.
Yeah.
What console was it?
You stole my question.
Yeah, I can't stand you.
It's horrible, but it was awesome to me. It was I think it's called a Studio Master. It's possible.
Sounds like something that'd be on Temu
This
these
is
days.
pre-Mackie.
It was the Mackie competitor.
It's everything that Mackie wished it could be,
Okay.
which it was mediocre, and I think Mackie was aspiring to that mediocrity. And it had a.
I believe they still are.
So
That's demoralizing. You just absolutely ended that LLC.
if
They just dissolved.
oh yeah, I don't listen.
It's just their corporate docs just got deleted off Dropbox.
It's functional.
Yeah.
It's functional. It's just not good. And so
Upper Room's using a Mackie speaker on stage, right?
It's true. We have a Mackie wedge.
Sorry, carry on.
But
The
it's
console
powered.
Studio Master.
I didn't say it was bad. I just
Yeah,
said it failed to be good.
Yeah.
And so
that was the worst insult I've ever
I'm not
heard
trying to
in my
be
life.
snobby. I'm just trying to be objective.
And this is the part of the episode where we want to shout out to Mackie. 'Cause
Shout out to Mackie
Our
for being
sponsor today.
evaporated within By the way, this
Mackie's-
episode
Mackie's
ad
been-
break right here.
yeah. Mackie's been displaced by Behringer.
Yeah.
And so they're now,
Yeah,
they're shooting for mediocrity. I don't know if they're getting
our
there. but
business
they're
would be
working on
gone
it.
if Behringer didn't exist. So I'm not
Listen,
going to compete.
that's not necessarily true, but yeah.
We'd lose about 20% of our clients.
Listen, it's functional, and that's important because they made the function available at a low price point, and you need that function's important.
And not to tangent, but here's something people don't talk about is longevity. I encounter X32s that are 12 years old all the time, and they still work.
That stuff was built for
Kind
the
of.
war. Yeah.
They work. The only thing is the EQ, the knobs right below
Yeah.
the screen are the only place that they failed at all. All the knobs on the left work. Those ones, you're trying to change the EQ and it doesn't go. Other than that, they're tanks.
I think this might be the definition of a tangent. I want to think of
where in
something
the
that's more
world were we?
tangential than that.
Yes. Where were we?
I think we're talking about me,
We
and now
were.
we're talking about you and your Behringer problems.
My Behringer problems. Okay, so you were at 24 track at the church. Now you're part of the studio. Okay,
No,
and the first console. Yeah, so you're now working on a console.
I'm on a studio,
doing
and it had
audio.
a high, a shelf low, a high pass filter button, and then 2 non-sweepable parametrics, just fixed width parametrics. Or is that semi-parametric? There might be a name for that. I mean, you're in
That's
digital world.
semi-parametric, yeah.
You guys are in digital world. I don't
Yeah,
know
I
if
don't
there is
know.
such a thing as semi-parametric.
I
Yeah.
know it as knob.
No, well, semi-parametric means the top. The top was set, just like SSL channels, semi-parametric. Yep.
I don't know if you have a knob, and some of those channels you have a knob for how wide the queue is on a band.
That's what defines semi-parametric. So all 4 would have to have queue control in order for it to be parametric entirely. Yeah.
Well, but listen, it worked. I had some DBX 160 compressors.
Nice.
Had no idea what they did. I just plugged them in,
Oh
inserted
my
them, and
gosh.
just went, oh, that's a ton better.
Yeah.
Right?
So I was just astro crushing stuff with those 160s. And you're like, okay.
With
all
the
right,
160,
this is
you
happening.
can get that compression to come
10
out.
dB is a lot.
On the
more than
160.
10 dB on the
I mean,
160.
it is.
The attack's like -5. It's so
That was really fun, but I
aggressive.
didn't know. I mean, it didn't have enough compressors to go around. So let's say I recorded a drum kit, I would EQ it all together, and I'd have 3 channels of compression. I would just pick and choose. And sometimes if you just astro smash the overheads, the whole thing starts coming together. Sometimes you got to do the kick and the snare, and that's all you can do. And
Was
so,
there bussing? Was there subgroups on the
Oh no,
console?
that was not. This console was
Straight to the left, right, everything.
I mean, I think there were 4 groups.
Maybe groups are auxes.
So
there
you
had to be a
have
couple.
a couple of groups you could get to, like subgroups, and the auxes were really. This was a baby console,
Yeah,
but it
yeah,
had a
yeah.
bunch of channels, and so I started with that. Mixed some pretty cool things. I had 2 effects channels, so I had 1 delay, 1 reverb. Figure it out.
Nice.
And sometimes you could if you found an extra track, you could bounce a delay and use it from playback, and then use the delay unit in the mix. So, there's some tricks that you had to do. This is all old
So you were
school.
doing all this stuff.
I had nothing but time, so I could innovate, and I didn't need a lot of sleep, so I would just stay up all night, and I would show up just wrecked at school. But I don't know, school was always like, God gave me one thing that was real special, and that school was always easy for me,
Oh,
and it
that's
needed to
great.
be. It's the only way I survived, and
Yeah.
so I didn't need to sleep a lot. I didn't need to study a lot, so I just. I worked on recording records because I loved music, and then I was also leading worship in youth groups and colleges and stuff like
Okay,
that.
so you were singing and playing guitar.
Yeah. I'm not great. I was
As
a
a
hack
singer?
guitar player, and I think I might have a pretty okay rock and roll voice. I played in rock bands, but I don't have a very good worship leader voice. I think there's too much pain in my voice to work as a worship leader.
Very well
Too
said.
much grunge.
Yes.
That's what when I would record out in LA. I had a later season where I was working in LA a lot, and I was recording, and it was like, dude, you just communicate your whole life in the way that you sing. And I'm like, I don't think that works in worship, man.
Yeah, you're just bringing people,
There's just
bringing
too much
people
going
their
on there.
worst memories ever.
Hard to sing along to, so I mean, that's okay. But really, that's
the
what
studio was it. Yeah.
well, and then I'm 23, 24, I'm leading worship and realizing, like, all my worship leader buddies, I'm inviting them to come and sing at my church, and then none of them are inviting me to go sing at their church. Eventually you start to get the message.
Yeah.
And all of them wanted me to go to their church and sprinkle the magic fairy dust of vibe on their church, because my church felt great with the lighting, the way it sounded, because I knew about all that stuff working in the studio.
Is that the branch?
I was at the branch, yeah.
That's the branch.
That's right by my house,
Yeah,
coincidentally enough.
This is when they had the Plaza Theater, and so we had this old, really cool theater, and just I would bring in all the projectors that I knew and shine them on the wall and do all these psychedelic looks just so worship would feel no one
Like
was doing anything.
Some
like this.
experience.
And I would throw speakers in the back and try to make it surround sound once in a while and stuff like that. But all you can
Dude,
do
that's
is
so cool.
you can route like the pad kind of organy sounds and some delays behind people.
He was doing soundscape in 1998.
I mean, listen, it was rudimentary to say the least.
Did you delay them?
Yeah.
No.
He did not time align them.
I didn't know enough to time align them. I just threw them up there and routed them. It's like, well, that feels pretty cool. If
Yeah.
you're sitting close to that, that's all you're going to hear. But that's still, I mean,
Yeah, you were just sculpting an experience.
I went through this
so
one
cool.
season where I kind of got into, DC Talk was a big deal back in the day, and I met the tour pastor of that. I knew those guys, and so I met the tour pastor, and he goes, "There's only one star, the bright morning star. That's the theme of this tour. Like everybody, because they all have this Bible study before and stuff." And he was like, "My job as tour pastor is to remind everybody we hear about the bright morning star." And I was like, "Oh man, I like that a lot."
Yeah.
And so I went through this. I just freaked out in worship and used only backlight for 6 months because people started to think I was cool, and that made me feel real weird. It's like, oh no, this is not about me being cool. This is about shining the light on Jesus. And so if someone is talking, they can have a face light.
Other than that, it was
Other
just
than that,
straight
it's
silhouette.
all black light, silhouette. All black and blue or whatever color I had, because it's all gels. There was no, you go buy little thin gels and you stick them over these par cans and shine them in the back.
Send the intern up to the rafters and swap out the.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not my fault. They're an intern, Go change those gels out. And
Yeah, the chills.
I think all that. You're leading worship, and all these worship leaders were vibing on this. Like, dude, it feels so cool to lead worship here. I'd love leading worship in your space. And I was like, well, I don't know what it's like to lead worship in your space because you've never invited me. But they
Settled in.
I'm working through that still. Years of
Still
counseling.
bitter, but
No, they would say, "Hey, man, could I hire you to come in and fix the sound and make this feel cool because your thing feels so cool." And it really is out of that maybe a real calling emerged. There's a difference between a dream that you have and some real calling that's on your life.
yeah,
Being on stage in that capacity was my dream. What I was called to do, and it's a force multiplier.
yeah,
I'm much more effective on behalf of the kingdom off the stage than I am on the stage.
yeah.
And so I ended up helping all my buddies do their churches, and out of that came a company.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so against my will, really, I was bitter at the Lord for maybe 10 years.
Wow.
And then it started to succeed, and I was like, well, I like the money. So we kind of came to like a truce, like me and Jesus have a truce, had a truce about it.
Yeah.
And it really took me, till I was in my late 30s to go, wait a second. My heart was to have stadiums full of people worshiping God, but I wanted to be the center of it. If I'm willing to give that up, because every weekend right now there are stadiums full of people experiencing God as a result of the work that I have done in this world. Hundreds of thousands of people every weekend.
Yeah.
I've had a chance to influence, and I just go, okay, God's been faithful to something He put in my heart when I was young.
Yeah.
He just didn't do it in the way that glorified me. He did it in a way that glorified Him. And maybe I've matured enough to be totally okay with that.
Yeah.
And so that's the narrative.
So
There's
cool.
a narrative arc.
That's awesome.
Oh my gosh.
It's also why when I heard about Audio Link that I just went like, oh, I'm way in on this, because these guys are doing something cool and innovative I've never seen before, and they're making excellence possible for many, many more people. I'm like, okay, I like this a lot. So thank you for inviting me, because it makes me feel cool to be part of innovation.
I remember the first time I met you. It was one of the first times I didn't know. Like, I was trying to get a read on you. I'm like, is this man actually as generous as he seems to be at this moment?
Yes.
And I've realized that, like, there's no frills about you.
Yes.
Like, you are 100% the person that you present yourself to everyone. And I think that that can only come, like I said it to recently, that like age and wisdom gives you an actual kind of an accurate picture of what is valuable in your life. Like, you need to know where, and you in me at least, you saw potential somehow. I didn't see it, but you did. And there's I think that ability to pour into people so effortlessly is like, it's so pure and good, and people don't know how to respond to that, because it's so rare. Dude, it's so rare. It's like it and you can only have gone through hell to have kind of be able to pour out like you do, and I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
For real, I'm so grateful. I've learned so much from you.
Now you guys are back to making me feel awkward. But
No.
I accept it.
No, I honestly, well, I don't know. It's so much of your story, like I haven't heard it in this context for some reason, even though we've talked a lot, or just laid out that way. And it just makes me think about how, and it's actually a little bit what I was talking to the Uber driver about today, but how like God just has this manner of like taking such brokenness and using that, like that was out of our control, and using that to actually through us, like in your case, like heal other people. And I feel like my relationship with you like has been healing in a lot of ways, because most of the I think I naturally just tend to this like very transactional view of, and I don't know if it was my upbringing or if it was just my personality or whatever, but this very like transactional way of processing everything. And I don't think I've had that in my marriage, but all my friendships, I'm like, if there is not this proper give and take, we're not okay, right? But then it's like the gift that's freely given. That concept, I think even in my faith, receiving like is tough, and you've just like exemplified that amazingly to me. And
Do you mind if I shed some light on that?
yeah, sure, yeah, please.
I have discovered the secret of life, and it's why you see me smile, why when you're around me I laugh a lot, and why things are pretty light around me most of the time. There's a scripture verse that says it's better to give than receive, and most people think that is a moral statement, that it is qualitatively or morally better to give than receive. You should be trying to give. And people think that's a moral statement, and it really is a quality of life statement. It is better for you if you give.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because the happiest people I know are the most generous people I know.
Yeah.
True.
And I'm one of the happiest people that you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are.
And so,
I agree.
Yeah.
I might be saying that aspirationally, but I'm pretty sure I'm one of the happiest people that you know.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is when you hang on to things, it makes you miserable.
Yep.
Yeah.
And when you have an opportunity to bless other people, you are actually experiencing it is transactional, but it's not transactional in a binary way
Yeah.
or in a unilateral way. It's
Yeah.
blessings move in circles, not in lines.
Yeah.
And so when you bless somebody, you've actually cleared something out of your life that God can replace.
Yeah.
And I have found that the more generous that I am, and this is not a name it, claim it, blab it, and grab it. That's not where I'm coming from. When you operate out of God's heart, who is ultimately generous, and it becomes easy for you to be a blessing to other people, you become much easier to bless. And if you bless people to be blessed, then you're self-involved. But it probably will still work. You'll just be miserable. If you are really kind to people as an instinct and you bless them on purpose, you'd be astonished at what God will do for you.
Wow.
And it's motive of the heart and all those other things, but it is the secret to life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so good.
So good.
And I've seen that be real. I've had a handful of people example that to me, but it really just comes from this idea I arrived at in college, where God is a father of the fatherless. That makes me, that gives me a unique access to God, to the Father of the universe. I have unique access. The Bible also says that God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, so that makes me a trust funder. And the idea of a trust fund is really this: if you can be trusted, I will fund it. And so the premise of my journey has been, how trustworthy can I be?
Wow.
And the more loosely I hold things, the more trustworthy I become.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
If you want a little picture of how I'm viewing the world,
Yeah.
That's so amazing.
I didn't mean to just jump off the deep end there.
No,
But
You didn't. That was so good.
We get caught up in and sound guys, which is I think most of our audience is guys who do sound. or people.
It's a
who-
thankless.
worship
It's
and-
a
It is
sacrifice of praise because it is thankless. I love
Absolutely.
sound guys because
Yeah.
they're ultimate servants. They have some attitude problems. We're all working on that. I had attitude
Yeah,
problems.
primarily me.
Um,
Other than Brandon,
I was obnoxious as a sound guy.
Yeah.
But, you know,
some diabolical
faithful to me.
humans.
The,
Yeah,
the, the thing about being a sound guy is typically like the controlling nature. It's so therapeutic to have this thing that I know I have control over.
Yeah.
And
True,
it's like for me, that thing is wrapping cables.
Yeah.
I know that I can wrap every cable perfectly, and that when I go to grab it, it's gonna roll out and there's no knots. I know that,
yeah.
right? That's therapeutic for me.
are you an over-under guy?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
And then,
yeah.
yep, the whole thing.
Dive
but
deeper. No, I'm joking.
that whole idea, though, it stems from, I think that people look for a way to serve in the church, but it's the Lord is like reaching out to the people who have those controlling sort of like wounds in their life, and to get them into the presence, you know.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like this whole experiment rather. It's like I'm on a mission, and we're on a mission to like reduce that and start to live life like open-handedly, you know, and start to serve the teams. That's why we had Abby and Gabe on, because it's like if you can serve, like everyone gets better. Everyone's like, oh, how's that mix so good? It's because I'm like best friends with the guy up there, you know. And it's not because of anything I'm doing. It's because we have a synergy that is intangible, that's based outside in your life. That whole it speaks to acceptance and all those things.
Yeah.
But like, the sound guys, exactly what you said is true. They're so thankless. It's so like, if it's right, no one says anything. If it's wrong, they get called
Everyone
out from
says
the
something.
stage.
Yes.
We've posted memes of that one guy, Charles.
Charles. We gotta fix these. What was that? That was so funny.
Microphones, Charles, and the pastor's calling this guy out
He's calling him out in front of tons of people.
in the service.
For
like,
some
just-
reason, that's appropriate.
yeah, and
And
it's,
I would bet that guy does not have the tools to make it good in that
100%.
context.
No, he
So,
doesn't know.
but it's like it really is. I see kind of like it's a ministry for us, and I feel like a burden from the Lord about like reaching out to the rejected sound guy who's 55 with the ponytail named Rodney.
Yes.
You know, like
Our-
that guy.
yes.
Or who did
I
sound
know
We
some
say that
Rodneys.
every episode.
but you're not every episode.
Yeah, close.
Well,
said it twice.
so my life was in two tracks.
Yeah.
I was a worship leader for a while, and then I was mixing front of house, and I only started mixing front of house when things went digital, because when I started making worship records, I worked in the early days of Pro Tools, and so I recorded a worship record way back in the day, and it sounds like the future, but you can still tell what time it's from, if that makes sense. Like, I mean, this is a long time. It's like 25 years ago. Everything sounded like Darlene Zschech, and I was trying to sound like Pink Floyd and Oasis and the Verve
Yes,
and all the
that
bands
was the
I
stuff you
loved.
liked,
And
yeah.
so I made this record. I'm singing a lot on it, and so it's not great, but you get what you get. But I mixed that in Pro Tools. In mixing in Pro Tools, and when consoles went digital for live, I began to be able to mix live because
That's so
you
interesting.
had all of those tools available.
Yes.
I needed gates on every channel. I needed,
That was how you
compressors.
operated. Yeah.
And so that made a lot of sense to me.
Because before that, it was all analog. There was just like a 4-band EQ and a fader and a mute button.
And you might have 4 or 6 channels of compression. You might have
For the whole
a couple
mix.
channels of gating. It
And it was all
tough.
inserted. Like it was like in
Yes.
a rack over here. You
Oh,
know, like plug
snap.
it in. Yep, the whole thing.
I mean,
remember
that, and I mixed for a bit on that. Just when I wasn't leading worship, it's just a way to make a few dollars. And then I started mixing broadcast at a very large church in this area because studio made sense to me, and so they brought me in to mix broadcast and took it up very significantly. But I knew how to mix studio, and broadcast translated well to that. And then when I started mixing live, I was also playing in some pretty great band situations. And so a lot of the guys on stage respected me because they knew that I'd been on stage as much as I'd been behind a console. And that's when I stopped being the obnoxious audio guy,
Yeah.
where everybody's yelling at me and I'm just, I know what that is. That
Yeah.
feeling like I'm going to reject all these people before they can reject me. I know what that feeling is.
Yeah.
When I was playing, and I was playing shows across the country and stuff like this, and so I would mix 3 weekends, and I'd be off a weekend because I'd be in California or something, working on records and stuff, and all those guys that I was mixing knew this. And so when I would holler down and said, "Hey, listen, man, your snare is tuned up just a little too high. It's exciting this room. Could you drop that down just a little bit, get it underneath this room resonance?" And like, "Yeah, got it. Thank you." And so I learned how to be kind. And then between services, I'd go hang with the band.
Yeah.
And we bro it out. And then I got married at some point, and we would have all the band guys over for dinner because they're all starving, and stuff like this.
Because they hadn't eaten the whole week.
Dinner at my house, and everybody would say yes. And so around that, I figured out that there can be real community between the people on stage and the people supporting them. And when that starts happening, when there's love, not only does everybody happier, but what starts coming out of those speakers is massively better.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I realized that if they trusted me and they would listen, like, "Hey, would you pull the reverb back on your guitar amp just a little bit so I can add something to it here?" Like, "Yes, yeah, got it, no problem." Everybody was just real cool instead of being in a defensive posture.
Yep.
Yeah.
People who play music from a defensive posture are never in the pocket.
No.
It never is right.
It's not
People
good.
who play music from a liberated, "I trust these people, I'm doing my place in this."
Yes. Playing as a team.
It starts, everybody doesn't have to be great, but magic can come out of those speakers, and it gets real fun to mix when all that is happening. But that cohesion between front of house and
That's
the
so
stage
good.
is when the magic starts happening. That's what I started to really love. This is before we were designing worship spaces and sound systems.
And what was the first digital console? I'm going to guess it was if it's there, was it at that big church?
Yep.
It was a PM1D?
I mixed on a PM1D, but it was not the first digital console
I
I
know what
mixed
it
on.
was.
Go
It's
ahead.
the D show.
No, I mixed on the D show after the PM1D, the very first D show.
No. The very
Wait,
first
so how am I wrong with the PM1D here?
Oh, because you got to go smaller and worse.
Okay.
Wait. Is it the
No.
10,000?
So yeah, there was
1,000
so
D?
it's not Digico, it's something else. Soundtracks, I think it was called.
Okay, yeah, I don't know.
Digico bought a company called Soundtracks that made broadcast consoles. So that was the very first Digico consoles where some of that technology came. And I mixed on the very first one of those mixing broadcasts.
Soundtracks.
And it was a crash monster. I mean, we would be running a compensated mix from front of house just in case it crashed, because it'd be all happening and all of a sudden it would just disappear. We'd flip over to that until I could get it all back on, and then we'd flip. So it crashed about half a dozen times a year. It would just hard crash.
Wow.
And so
Oh my gosh.
that was stressful. And I had, when I was mixing broadcast, I had all this great like Manly Varimu compressors and all kinds of super fun stuff that I was using all the digital stuff and then inserting all this analog stuff that was happening.
That is
Real
awesome.
fun. And so I hope all the audio engineers listening to this just give me credibility, because
Yeah, he knows.
I did analog
The
and
man
digital.
knows.
I don't know what you're doing now. I never had multi-band compressors. I don't even know what that does or what that means.
Yeah.
But
I don't even know how to be here.
But I got to work with real stuff, and I used
that's
to be
great.
somebody,
You know what? I think one of the most amazing moments in my audio engineering career was similar to that point, where it was like I was dealing with X set of stuff, X set of musicians, X set of circumstances and limitations, and just like under that coat and like oppression for so long, and then got out to like better sources, better equipment, better something one day, and the first day I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually what I'm capable of.
Yeah.
And it was the most gratifying thing. So I'm sure you experienced a version of that. I think of that as like a great moment in my life when I like realized that. So I think that's also encouragement for everyone out there. Like if you are just like mixing in some church, I've probably said something like this before, but like if you're mixing in some church and it's just like always just like the same, you don't feel like it sounds so good, like just keep trying to make it sound good, keep trying to make it sound good, because you're getting better. You know what I'm saying? You're getting better and better, just even dealing with that same formula you're fighting. And then you get another context and it's like, boom, I do have chops, But okay, so for...
I want to say something about that real quick.
Yeah.
So this is when I was playing. So I'm playing in this really great rock band and a top engineer who was, mixing for Maroon 5 and stuff like that. One of my best friends he was mixing for Maroon 5 and some other people. He's coming out. He's going to mix for me. And I mean, he's not charging me. We're just broing it out. It's very cool of him to do this. And we do one, and we've got the right system and the right console, and we play, and it's awesome. And he does another one for us a few weeks later. We're playing somewhere else in the middle of Texas near Austin or something. And he shows up, and it is just some real weird, terrible circumstance and hodgepodge speaker systems. And we leave, and he goes, you know, I'm more proud of the fact that sounded mediocre than I am of the fact the last one sounded great.
Yes.
Because that was real hard.
Yeah.
Yes.
But everybody who left goes, I can't believe how good you made this sound. It never sounds as good in here. If you're good, you can make anything sound good.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Just whatever it is.
This guy.
You learn to maximize. If you learn to maximize average, when you get a chance at great, you will shine.
Yeah. How do you play when your shots are not falling? Is the point, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're not making any shots, how do you perform, right?
And if someone hasn't wrangled a great mix out of a Behringer X32, then you're not qualified to mix on anything nicer.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I'd agree with that. But the Soundcraft SI Expression has nothing to do with that point.
Okay,
that is the worst console on the face of the earth, and I'm so sorry to say that.
No.
Sure?
See, I'm going to disagree because we're going back to
Oh,
Mackie
glory
here.
to God.
This exists.
I mixed.
Yeah, valid. Carry on.
I mixed on Mackie's first digital console. I don't remember what it was called, but no matter what happens, the faders were never reset to the right place, so scenes were useless.
It was a combination between jazz and funk.
And then when you moved the rotary knobs, they would not respond until you twisted them harder, and then they would jump. And so, it was erratic.
That's
and
demoralizing.
Volatile, to say the least.
I had this we did a Spanish tour with Upper Room and Tomo to Lugar in 2021, and we went to this place in New Jersey, and they had a Pro 1 Midas.
Ooh.
And it's great, cool, right? Patching on those is a nightmare, but
oh yeah,
that's its own science experiment.
All of the surfaces, each fader, each knob, nothing responded. It was like glitchy and just do the whole thing.
Dude.
And the guy there was like, yeah, you just got to use the mouse and the click and drag.
Oh
like,
my gosh,
for this whole thing, I'm trying. I'm literally.
You're clicking and dragging.
It's like this. Yeah, there's a little, the ball.
Yes, the
wheel
ball. Yeah.
On those consoles and the click, and that was how I'd move faders. And these faders I'd move it on the screen and it wouldn't move on the.
Oh no!
For the whole thing.
That's tough.
Sound check,
Mick
everything,
Hughes.
any EQ changes, it was horrible.
Mick Hughes saved Midas in their digital consoles.
Oh, yeah.
He saved them because he championed them.
The Pro X.
And he was doing it for Metallica, so know he did not patch in a single input.
Yeah.
And someone else was serving it, servicing it.
They sounded great.
Oh, they sounded so
great. They were
good.
just so hard
The
to use.
XL8, that's what he was on.
Oh, yeah.
The XL8.
Yeah,
251 preamp is unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. Well, so there's only one console I've been absolutely, totally Jedi on, and it's back in it was a baby sister, baby brother of a PM1D, but on a Yamaha M7. I mixed on hundreds of those things.
Oh, yeah.
Man, they sound horrible.
Yep.
But I did something.
Sound like you're mixing through a carpet.
Okay, so
yeah,
I figured something
like
out.
Everything was off of a baffle.
Yeah, and
So
that's what I'm hearing.
again, this is at a big church, and I'm mixing one of the campuses. And I get this idea going. I've got a little bit of Christmas money. We're doing the Christmas services, and so I'm going to do something special here. And I went and rented a whole bunch of 500 form factor.
Oh, Pre's?
Like I got 3 or 4 APIs. I got a couple Neves in there. I just filled it.
How'd you get them in?
There's a line card.
Expansion cards.
Oh.
There was an insert card on it.
They had 3 of them.
I forgot.
Yeah.
You could do line level.
Yeah, and so I took the insert card and I just used the input side of it and patched that in, and I just, you just use a handful of cables, you just patch it over to there. And so I just pulled the input from the back of the console and just used cables. I mean, it's Renegade.
It's a
Yes.
DB25.
It's a DB25
Yeah.
connector. Yeah, I've seen
and
that
so
card.
it's Renegade, but it was
That's great.
It sounded great. For contextually where
was
you were.
like, this girl could really sing too. I remember her name
It's
was
all about
Becky,
the
and
sigh.
she could sing like an angel, like proper world class singer. Her voice
Yeah.
was so cool, and her voice sounded like it was bigger than the line arrays.
Really?
I mean, it was just the kick. I did lead vocals, kick, snare, bass, and electrics,
Yeah.
and it was
You could feel it.
just gigantic.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Like, okay. the process, it's all the preamp. It's
The
all the preamp
pre's-
stage in there. And I got around that, and that console sounded amazing. And I went like, all right, I've learned something.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so-
these companies with the price points, and like that's an insight that I learned part of the way through. Is like, all right, why is this console $2,500 and it's the same amount of channels as this one that's $40,000? It's like, why would that be? Well, there's one thing that there's a bunch of in this, and it's
Yeah.
preamps.
If you look at like 80 series pre's, like those old neat, like the 1073s,
Yep.
they're like the original ones are all 80 series, and because they need like heavy voltage to be able to like, and so the 500 series
Pulling that
ones, if you
off.
look at like the BAE
Yeah.
1073, it's 3 500 series slots because it needs to pull a ton of voltage.
Yeah.
That's like the
I
circuit
haven't even
thing.
thought about that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's probably a factor.
we had I remember doing those services, and you couldn't automate pre's or anything like that, but it's okay. I trusted that those gains would be right. I could automate everything else, and it was just people. It's one of the few times something was great, and people came to me and went, "That
Yo.
sounded amazing.
Yeah.
What did you do?"
Well, because they
And I
weren't
was
used
like-
to hearing sound like that.
Yeah, and
I want to know what the next week sounded like.
exactly like the previous week. it was depressing to say the least. That's okay. You learn to get past it. I didn't mean to
Correct.
jump into nerd world. Then,
No,
but-
this is
We
what
live
our
in nerd
listeners
world.
love.
yeah, we're getting we're vacillating between
No,
profoundness and
it just
we
absolute.
just took a hard ride into nerds.
Okay, so before we wrap, just because the recording will stop soon, like a lot of the people that listen to us, I get the impression it's like, tech directors, production people that are trying to make records, worship people. What is probably the main thing? Like, you interact with more churches than like anybody. We're gonna catch you because just of our pace, but
I'm at about 500 so far. So
yeah. Well, I either way, I think like even the way you also like, it's not like a 5-minute transaction you have with these people. Like, you build a relationship with them. You know what's going on. You know who's who. What just. If there was anything that you could share to people, just like encourage people that are working in ministry, what would that be?
I've been doing something lately in my own life, and I would encourage, if I can encourage, I can't stand platitudes. I'll start with that.
Yeah.
Try to be more gracious, or try to be more patient, or whatever. Those are virtues, and they're inaccessible unless you have an action item
Yes.
to cultivate that.
Agreed. Yeah.
So I do something in my own life, and there's kind of a long history. But it's evolved into something recently that I think would be hugely beneficial to people, and it's just the idea of first fruits.
Yeah.
And so I've always believed, I say always, in my adult life, have believed in, people tithe. Well, I used to escrow my own tithe and just go buy stuff I thought the church needed, like, oh man, the pastor's bike is garbage, and just a new one
escrow
would show up,
That's the first time we've ever used
If
that
you
word on
don't
this
own an
podcast.
LLC, I don't know.
Okay, I would set my tithe aside
Yes,
and
yes,
just wait till
for
I found
everyone.
an opportunity to give. I got real convicted about that. I was like, well, I'm not really submitting the tithe. I
No.
am imposing my will on these.
Yeah, you were
These
not even really
leaders.
putting the tithe in the storehouse.
No, I'm
You were putting it in the.
my will be done.
Yes.
Honestly, that's the most sound guy thing.
I know. Yeah, that's a lot.
I
You
would
just-
escrow my time.
I would
Yeah,
escrow my
you just
tithes
got to look
purchase
into my
preamps.
character as a young man, and so I really started first. Then I started tithing, and then I heard this pastor at a church called Covenant, a guy named Mike Hayes, did this book about first fruits that it really impacted me, where it's what you do first really sets the tone. Because if you pay your rent first, your rent doesn't have the power to bless your life. The living God of heaven has the power to bless your life. Give your tithe first and submit it. And it's hard to submit. It's really hard for technical people to submit because they're innately intelligent a lot of times. And intelligent people have hang-ups with trusting other people. And that's the pride bridge that we have to cross, the
Yeah.
humility bridge.
Yeah.
It's active humility. I choose to submit. So I did that for a long time, and man, I could see that fruit in my financial life. and I experienced God's provision in profound ways. And so I was like, all right. But recently I've gotten into first fruits of my day. And so when I wake up in the morning, the very first thing I look at is a scripture verse. That's the first fruits of my eyes. The first thing I listen to is worship music. It's the first fruit of my ears. The first thing I say is some prayer along the lines of, God, I trust you to help me see what you see, help me hear what you're saying, and help me speak what you want me to say. I've engaged my mind and my body in service to you. Use me today according to your will.
Wow.
And what I've done by doing that is I've offered not just the first fruits of my dollars every pay period, but it's the first fruit of my faculties every day. And it puts you in a context of being able to see with God's eyes and hear what he hears.
Wow.
And it makes what people do, and not just sound guys, but anybody in any technical art. There's lighting guys and video guys and all that. You begin to see that through the lens of this is a form of worship. This is a form of not serving these people, but serving the Lord. And I've had to put myself in that posture because I work with churches almost exclusively, and they can be very difficult, and it takes a lot of patience. And a lot of it is they don't understand what I know, and they don't know why this console's $5,000, this console's $50,000.
Exactly.
The $5,000 console is not going to work.
Yeah.
And so it takes a lot of patience and a lot of grace. And the person who works in technical arts that operates in grace is so valuable to the kingdom, and the only way to have grace is to essentially submit in that way on a daily basis. That's what I would say.
Oh my gosh, that was so good.
Dang.
Very profound.
Honestly, it's so good to hear like the experience and you living it and sharing that with us. It's important, because I can say that, but no one believes me.
I don't believe anything you say, Ben. No, I'm joking.
If you fail enough times, you start to get it right, and we start getting it right, people start trusting you.
Yeah, that's so good, man.
That's amazing. Brandon, thank you so much for being on here,
sir.
bro.
Thank
This
you.
was freaking amazing.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yes.
I'm a big fan, you know that, and so I'm happy to just, represent the fan club here.
Oh my gosh.
Well, it won't be the last time.
We
you're on.
receive you as a representative.
It's true.
Yeah, I'm happy to come back anytime. It's a good hang.
Yes. Awesome.
sir.
All right. See you guys.